What's up, metal and heavy music fans? It's Flight of Icarus again with MetalTrenches.com, and today we are ranking the albums of Cradle of Filth. And hey, if you'd like to be kept up to date with the best and brightest metal bands and albums from the underground and above, then stick with me by hitting that subscribe button down below. Alright, the time has come. Cradle of Filth tier list. And let's just jump right into it with The Principle of Evil Made Flesh in 1994. This is kind of a weird album in their discography. It has more of like a death metal sound to it. Danny kind of going for a deeper, more vomity growl as opposed to his classic high screeches. Still hear some of the early elements, especially in the synths and spoken word. Kind of neat to hear, but just in short, I'd say it's a D overall. By the way, I do think it's kind of neat that they have stuck with the exact same logo since the very beginning. That's not always the case. Alright, but next we have Dusk and Her Embrace in 1996, and this is an absolute classic. Excellent album for the era. One of the most probably just straight up black metal sounding albums from them. It has a lot of those kind of classic second wave vibes and tropes, but with their usual dark romantic twist to it. Great atmosphere all over this thing. Admittedly though, inconsistent. Favorite tracks personally, Heaven Torn Asunder, Dusk and Her Embrace, and Funeral in Carpathia. I'm going to give this one a B. Then we have Cruelty and the Beast in 1998, and this is a concept album about Elizabeth Bathory. Definitely hailed by many fans as a favorite. It was an album I rejected for a long time for whatever reason, but coming back to it and re-listening to it again, I'm like, what is wrong with me? This is, like, I can see why it's such a great album. Notable though, members were upset with the production, especially on the drums, and so I guess they recently remastered it. But yeah, I never really went gaga for it back in the day, but I had a really great time with it now. Favorite tracks here, 13 Autumns and a Widow, Cruelty Brought the Orchids, and Desire in Violent Overture. And hey, I gotta give them credit for taking one of the most inaccessible genres and repackaging it for the corset and top hat wearing Bram Stoker's Dracula crowd, which is kind of how I've always looked at this fan base. I'm gonna give this one an A. Alright, then we have Midian in 2000. This was actually my first exposure to Cradle, so as such I have some nostalgia for it. Cthulhu Dawn is still one of my all-time favorite Cradle tracks. Gets me every time. This album is also conceptual. It's loosely based on Cabal, or Nightbreed was the name of the movie. Doug Bradley, who is actually in the movie and you'd better know as Pinhead, also provides narration and will on many albums from this point forward. Other favorite tracks on here, Saffron's Curse, Death Magic for Adepts, Amor e Morti, and Her Ghost in the Fog. Lots of great hooks on this one from the guitar and the organ, which is something I really appreciate. I tend to like Cradle the most when it's just going like fast and furious and there's those guitar riffs that stick in your head or some sort of melody that like really lingers with you. Some cool choral parts on here too, and I gotta say I love it even more re-listening to it this time. I'm actually gonna push this one all the way up to S tier. Next up is Damnation and a Day in 2003, which is partially based on Paradise Lost. This is the only album released on Sony's label, and it features the Budapest Film Orchestra, so appropriately this album sounds absolutely massive. Favorite tracks here, The Promise of Fever and Presence from the Poison Hearted, but I gotta say, it is too long at nearly an hour and 20 minutes, and you know, Cradle's always had long albums, but this one definitely feels its length, which is a problem. Lots of great moments, but feels less focused than some of the better ones. I get a little bored, especially in the final quarter, so it's unfortunate because it's really cool that they've got this live orchestra going on, but ultimately, I'm going to give this one a B. It's still solid, but it's just not quite up to snuff. Nymphetamine, 2004. It's around this point that things start to feel a little bit tired for me. These songs are solid, but they don't really offer up anything new or special at this point. Kind of ends up feeling like a lesser retread of previous material, which makes, once again, the lengthy runtime even harder to get through on this one. Not terrible by any means, but very underwhelming, although there are some straight up lame tracks, like English Fire is just, not for me. As for my favorites though, Gilded Sea and Nymphetamine Fix are a strong opener and closer, but overall I'm going to give this one a C. Then there is Thornography in 2006. You can feel those same issues from the previous album seeping in right from the beginning on this one. Usually at least Cradle has a really great opening track that gets me going, but this one already starts off on a pretty mild note. The Foetus of a New Day Kicking has some great thrashy parts, but then the chorus kind of ruins it for me. Under the Huntress Moon is decent, great bass guitar on that one as well. Once again, not terrible, still some solid moments here and there, but just to keep things, again, kind of differentiated by tier, I'm going to put this one down at D. Oh, but then we have Godspeed on the Devil's Thunder in 2008. This is another concept album, this time about 15th century French Baron Gilles de Rais. Pretty solid opener here with Shat Out of Hell. I really dig that break in the middle with the start-stop riff and the chanting parts. The symphonic elements are great. They really heighten the atmosphere along with more narration, again from Doug Bradley. Other fun tracks, the 13th Caesar, Tragic Kingdom, Honey and Sulphur gets black metal as fuck. Sweetest Maleficia has a ripping guitar solo. Darkness Incarnate delivers with a killer bass break. Honestly, I hadn't heard much about this album. I just don't hear people talking about it very much, but it's pretty great. I really loved it. Very consistent, high energy drumming too. And just speaking of black metal in general, this is one of the few albums of theirs that I would comfortably call that without any reservations. Gonna give this one an A. Honestly, if they trimmed it down like just a little bit, I think that it could have been S. Then there's Darkly Darkly, Venus Aversa in 2010. This one's a concept album about the demon Lilith. I love a good harpsichord intro, and this one has that in spades. Definitely kicks off with a similar feel as Godspeed, but also feels like it's missing just a touch of that special sauce, and I can't put my finger on exactly what that is. Almost the same lineup too, save for the addition of a rhythm guitarist and shifting keyboards from Sarah to Ashley. It might be that Andy Sneap helped to produce the previous album and not this one. But yeah, still a strong outing overall. Favorite tracks here, The Cult of Venus Aversa, Church of the Sacred Heart, and One Foul Step from the Abyss. I'm going to give this one a B. Alright, The Manticore and Other Horrors, 2012. Similar trajectory, I'd say, from the last album. Same ideas, but not executed as well, in my opinion. They're down to a trio at this point, and this is the last album in the second stint with guitarist Paul Allender. And I just don't know how such fast, aggressive music can feel so tired, but it just does. There's just no magic to it, ironically to some of the titles here. I think that Kerrang summed it up best by saying there's nothing here that Cradle of Filth haven't done much better elsewhere. As always, there's some standouts, like For Your Vulgar Delectation has some cool riffs. I love the sitar on Manticore. Nightmares of an Ether Drinker is also really solid. I'm going to put this one at upper C tier. And just a note, as always, even within the tiers, they are ranked, so the closer they are to the letter, the higher they go. Alright, getting up to more of their present-day material, we've got Hammer of the Witches in 2015. I'm probably going to catch shit for saying this, but if you ask me, this is the best lineup Cradle has ever had. Seriously, talk about a second wind. This, to me, is like the beginning of like a real renaissance for the band. They've really stepped up the riffing and overall songwriting and just tightened things up. Slightly shorter track listing, but even the longer songs just feel more focused and concise. And this thing is just packed with bangers. You've got Yours Immortally, Enshrined in Crematoria, Deflowering the Maidenhead, Blackest Magic in Practice, and of course, Hammer of the Witches. I never really previous thought of them as a super guitar-driven band, but holy shit, the hooks on this thing. This is excellent. I'm putting it up at S tier. And then there's Cryptoriana, The Seductiveness of Decay in 2017. So how do you follow up a banger like Hammer of the Witches? You do it again, but even better. This was honestly one of the best albums of 2017 and another top-notch addition to their discography. I was raving about this thing and just absolutely floored once more that Cradle, this far into their career, is still dropping some of their best material. Best tracks here, Heartbreak and Seance, Wester Vespertine, The Seductiveness of Decay, The Night at Catafalque Manor, and especially You Will Know the Lion by Its Claw. Like, that song will just literally sink its claws into you and not let go with that vocal line. You will know the lion by his claw. Even the cover of Alice in Hell rips. So again, I'm going to put this one at S tier, even just a bit higher than Hammer of the Witches. And then that brings us to Existence is Futile in 2021. Another really solid follow-up, continuing the trend. This one feels kind of like the production and instrumentation of the most recent albums, combined with some of the vibes of albums like Cruelty and the Beast. Still some great riffs here with Existential Terror and How Many Tears to nurture a rose, but also more great atmospheric moments too on necromantic fantasies and black smoke curling from the lips of war. This is another one that makes for a very consistent listen. Like every time I put it on, I can go start to finish without really feeling the need to skip anything or ever getting bored. But I will say that I don't have quite as much fun with it as I did with the previous two albums, and there are a few other albums I'd probably choose over this one if I was in a Cradle of Filth mood. So ultimately, I'm going to put this one at the low end of A tier. But now it's your turn. Let me know down in the comments, how would you rank these Cradle albums? Which is your favorite, least favorite, and why? And then stick around, I've got a whole playlist of these tier lists and then album reviews and plenty of other content for you to check out here. But that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.